Okay. So hi everyone. So we will learn about load balancers today. So ELB is one of the configurations within EC2 that allows you to spawn up load balancers of three different types, which we'll be studying in the subsequent slides. So elastic load balancing automatically distributes your incoming application traffic across multiple targets, and those targets can be EC2 instances, can be containers, which we'll see at a later lecture, can be IP addresses, which means that you'll have to associate an ENI, or it can be Lambda functions. Right. So today's lab we will be utilizing EC2 instances, which is the most easiest way to configure load balancers on EC2 instances. So it can handle varying load for your application traffic in a single availability zone, or when you spread your instances across multiple availability zones. So it offers three types of load balancers that have different features, and it automatically allows you to go with high availability. It does automatic scaling, and it gives you very good security measures to make your applications fault tolerant or pretty secure. So we will see some of the features of the load balancer, but before that, let's look at the types of load balancers. So we have the first type over here, which is called as the application load balancer. And this application load balancer, as we all know, since we have studied CCNA, that we should have studied about the OSI layer, those 7 layers of the OSI model. So open system interconnect model, I think. So over there, you have the first layer, which is the physical layer. You have the data link layer. You have the network layer. You have the transport layer. You have the session layer. Then you have the presentation, and you have the application layer. So layer 7 application layer is where this application load balancer works on, best suited for load balancing of HTTP and HTTPS traffic, and provides advanced routing capability such as path-based routing capability, host header-based routing capability, and so on. So it operates at the layer 7, right? And load balancer's scope is within that VPC, right? So the load balancer scope is within that VPC, and that VPC is residing within that AWS region that we are going to use, right? So always remember that an application load balancer works on layer 7. So we will see some more properties of the application load balancer when we spawn an application load balancer and so on. So all of these load balancers get DNS names, and we will be using the DNS name. So AWS does not expose the IP address behind the DNS name for the load balancer. It only gives you a DNS name that internally resolves to IP addresses that are being alternatively changed and resolved by AWS themselves. So we will be using the DNS name of the load balancer. So I'll show you this on the console once we spawn up a load balancer. So similarly, since we have one application load balancer on the layer 7 of the OSI model, we also have a network load balancer that works on layer 4, right? And this network load balancer is best suited for load balancing traffic of TCP and UDP. TCP is transmission control protocol, and UDP is user datagram protocol. And it allows us to also have TLS security, and where extreme performance is required. So it operates at layer 4, and it's capable of handling millions of requests per second while maintaining ultra low latencies. Okay, so our lab will be based on application load balancer, but you can also try out spawning network load balancers and so on. So it's also optimized to handle sudden and volatile network traffic. So the use case for a network load balancer would be where you want very low latency, millions of requests, and handling sudden loads and so on. And the two at layer 4, where you have TCP and UDP, you would go with the network load balancer, right? And then finally, there is one load balancer which is of the previous generation. AWS does not recommend using this again. So this guy is called as a classic load balancer. It provides load balancing across multiple EC2 instances and operates both at the request level and connection level, which means it operates both at HTTP, HTTPS, and even at TCP and UDP. So the classic load balancer was actually intended to work with applications that were built when the EC2 classic network was there, which was much before when VPC was introduced, right? So it's kind of legacy in nature. We will not be using a classic load balancer, but then I will let you guys try that out too. So the configuration should be pretty simple. So now when it comes to the application load balancer and we work more with load balancers, there is something called as target groups. So this target group is nothing but it's a logical grouping of your targets for that particular load balancer, and it's used to route requests to one or more registered targets. And we will be creating the target group, and then we will be associating that target group to that load balancer, and then we will be registering our instances to the target group. So the way it works is, when you register instances to the target group, you are specifying that these are my registered instances. And when the target group is registered to the load balancer, you can specify that whenever the the request is sent to the load balancer, it should redirect or forward those requests to that particular target group, right? So again, when a rule condition is met, the traffic is forwarded to the corresponding target group, and you can create any number of target groups that you would like for different types of requests. For example, you can create one target group for general requests and other target groups for other microservices of your application. So one classic example over here would be, if suppose you consider the Flipkart application and you have 5 different microservices, you can have 5 different target groups for those microservices. So for example, you have something like the product service, the review service, the user service, the category service, the order service, and so on. You can have EC2 instances that are dedicated towards the product service. You can have EC2 instances that are dedicated towards the order service. You can have EC2 instances dedicated towards the review service, and so on. So you can logically isolate these EC2 instances for that particular service as target groups. So you can have one target group for the product service, one target group for the review service, one target group for the order service, and so on. So in that way, you can isolate, if suppose, let's say, for example, one request comes into your load balancer and it says /products, which means you can specify based on /product, I'm redirecting my traffic to one of the target groups, which is called as the product service target group. So in that way, you can, group your targets into a group called as a target group, one or more registered targets, which serve a similar purpose, I would say. So now when it comes to the concept regarding health checks, because the load balancer not only distributes your traffic across multiple availability zones, it also does a concept called as health checks, wherein it finds out whether your target is healthy or not. So for that, you will have to specify all of these configurations. So you have to specify the health check protocol. So since we are using the application load balancer, we are going to go with the health check protocol of HTTP or HTTPS. And we have to specify the health check port, which will be by default as 80 for HTTP. And then the health check path is going to be just /. The only reason is because we are going to reuse our AMI that we created in the previous lab. And on that AMI, all we need to do is just paste the public IP on the browser, and we'll be able to see our website, which is called as Hello World, and that's on /. So our health check path will be /. And then our health check timeout, interval, healthy threshold, unhealthy threshold. So these are 4 important configurations, right? So when it comes to the healthy threshold is nothing but the consecutive number of health checks your target has to pass in order to deem the target as healthy, right? And when it comes to unhealthy threshold, the consecutive number of health checks that it has to fail before deeming the target as unhealthy. And then when it comes to interval, it means that, how long should I wait until I do the next health check, right? So if I have to wait for 10 seconds between periods of health check, and when it comes to the timeout, it mentions like how many seconds do I have to wait in order to get a response from the target. So when a health check is happening and I get the response immediately, that's fine. If suppose I get the response within the timeout seconds of 2 seconds or 3 seconds, that's great. If I don't get the health check within the timeout seconds, that means it's going to be a failed health check. And if it continuously fails 2 or 3 health checks that you specify, then it's deemed as unhealthy, right? So these 4 are very important. And finally, the matcher is nothing but what HTTP status code would you like to get as a response from the target. So you can specify your range of HTTP status codes. So the HTTP status code for success is 200. So we will leave it as the same itself. Okay. So your load balancer, other than just going ahead and doing distribution of traffic across instances and multiple availability zones, and it also helps you with availability zone failover. It also does health checks on those targets, right? Okay, cool. So keeping these in mind, what we are going to do is we are going to go ahead and look at the architecture diagram that we'll be implementing today. So in this particular architecture diagram, let me just zoom in and show you. Okay, cool. So in this architecture diagram, we have an AWS cloud, and within which we have a region called US East 1, and within which we have a virtual private cloud. And then we have 2 availability zones over here. Availability zone 1, which is US East 1A, and availability zone 2, which is US East 1B. And with these 2 availability zones, we have 2 public subnets associated with it. And then we have EC2 instances in those public subnets. And this is in one availability zone. This is in another availability zone. And we are registering both of these into 2 different target groups. One target group called as teacher, which is based on the /teacher endpoint. Another one is called as target group called as student with /student endpoint. But today, instead of doing 2 different target groups and making your architecture complex, what we are going to do is we are going to have only one target group, and the target group is going to be called as the default target group, where both of these EC2 instances will be associated with that target group. and the target group will be associated with the load balancer. So if someone goes to the DNS endpoint of the load balancer, automatically your request is going to be redirected to that target group where both the EC2 instances are going to be associated with. Okay. So now I'll just modify this a little bit so that you guys are more clear. So instead of having two target groups, so we're going to have only one target group, and that one target group is going to have both of these EC2 instances as registered targets. And these EC2 instances will be spawned up from the AMI that we created in the previous lab. Okay, so I told you that we will be reusing that AMI. So we are going to spawn these EC2 instances with that AMI, and we are going to configure the load balancer, which is of type HTTP load balancer, because we are exposing our web application on port HTTP on both of these EC2 instances. So we are not using HTTPS anywhere. That is for another lecture. So we are going to go ahead and use only HTTP over here. So let's try to implement this. So first I'm going to spawn the EC2 instances, and then I'm going to go ahead and go with the application load balancer creation process. So all of the previous EC2 instances are in the terminated status. So let's launch two EC2 instances, one within one availability zone, the other one within another availability zone. So we are going to reuse US East 1A and US East 1C or 1B. Okay. So I'm going to click on launch EC2 instance. I'm going to go to my AMI. So we have so many AMIs over here, but I'm going to go with my web server AMI that I created before. And I'm going to go with T2 Micro. And in the configure instance details page, I'm going to place this within US East 1A for the first EC2 instance. I'm going to click on add storage. I'm going to click on add tags. I'm going to call this as my web server US East 1A. I'm going to configure the same security group I had before, which I called it as my web server SG, right? So let's just check whether it's that. Yeah, my web server SG, right? Click on review and launch, click on launch. I'm going to choose my key pair, go ahead and click on launch. So now we have launched one EC2 instance in one availability zone, which is in US East 1A. Let's launch one more EC2 instance in another availability zone. So let's launch the EC2 instance. Let's go ahead and choose my, okay, not this AMI, sorry. Choose my AMI. Launch EC2 instance, choose my AMI, and choose your web server AMI that you created previously. Go ahead and use T2 Micro. But now over here, we are going to put this in US East 1C availability zone rather than US East 1A. Go ahead and click on add storage, add tags, click to add a name tag. So we're going to place this in the US East 1C. We are going to reuse the same security group because the security group's scope is that VPC. So therefore, we are going to reuse the same security group rather than creating new ones. Click on review and launch. Launch. I'm going to go ahead and choose my key pair. I acknowledge and click on launch. So right now we have two EC2 instances. One EC2 instance in the US East 1A, one EC2 instance in the US East 1C. The US East 1A EC2 instance, since it's launched from our AMI, should also have Hello World directly running on the web browser. The other EC2 instance that is in the other availability zone, which is US East 1C, let's copy this guy's public IP and also paste it on the browser. We'll just wait for some time until this guy comes up. So we will also be able to see Hello World on this guy too. So AMIs are a very good way wherein you can enforce compliance and consistency across multiple EC2 instances. So let's just refresh this guy. So you can see we got Hello World on both our EC2 instances. So now is the process where we go ahead and create our load balancer. So going back to the diagram, we have created our EC2 instances right now. We have put it within different availability zones mapped to public subnets in those respective availability zones. Now our only job is to go ahead and create the application load balancer. So I'll walk you slowly through those steps. An application load balancer generally takes 3 to 4 minutes to come up. In the meantime, I will talk about the other configurations of an application load balancer, but I'll walk you through the settings. It's very important to note. So the first step is to go to load balancers. We already have one over here. Let that be there. I'm going to create a new one for myself. So I'm going to create load balancer. So now you get these three options that we described about. We have application load balancer that works on the HTTP and HTTPS layer. You have the network load balancer that works on the TCP, TLS, and UDP layer, which gives you that kind of ultra low latency with millions of requests that you can handle. And then you have the previous generation, which is the classic load balancer that works on HTTP, HTTPS, TCP, and so on. So we will right now go with the application load balancer. So now it's going to ask you for a name. So I'm going to give the load balancer a name. I'm going to call it as my web server ALB. And now the scheme is nothing but internet facing or internal. So since we have to resolve this application load balancer's DNS name from the internet, which I'm going to access from the browser sitting at my home, I'm going to go with internet facing. But what does this internal mean? This internal scheme means that if suppose you want to have a load balancer in your private subnet, if you have like 4 or 5 EC2 instances in your private subnet spread across multiple availability zones, and you want to have an internal load balancer that is resolvable only within your network and not outside of your network, you can go with an internal load balancer. Know that that's also possible, but right now we are going to resolve it from the browser. So we are going to go with internet facing load balancer. And the IP address type is IPv4 and the listener is HTTP. We are going to leave these the same because even our our EC2 instances are also exposing our web page on HTTP only, right? So we don't have any kind of security over here. So therefore, we are going to leave the load balancer port to also be HTTP and the listener to be, sorry, the port to be 80 and the listener to be HTTP. So now scrolling more down, we have to choose the availability zone within which we want the load balancer to be. I'm going to choose the default VPC. I have my 2 EC2 instances in which availability zones, US East 1A and 1C. So I'm going to choose only the US East 1A and 1C. But whenever you spawn load balancers, always remember, best practice, you can choose all the availability zones. If suppose you want to reuse it for a later purpose, but then I would suggest going with the respective availability zones for right now that you have launched your EC2 instances on. But best practice, go with all the availability zones for your load balancer. Totally fine. Okay. So now we are going to go ahead and configure security settings. So in the security settings, you can see that it's giving you a disclaimer stating that guys, you're not using HTTPS, but I know that we don't have HTTPS on our load balancer nor on our EC2 instances. So we are going to skip this right now and go to the next security group. So like how your EC2 instances have security groups, your load balancer also has a security group. I'm going to create a new security group for the load balancer. So I'm going to call this as my web server ALB-SG. And I'm going to leave these default rule as it is because we want to open up port 80 on our load balancer because we should be able to hit it from the outside world, right? And the load balancer's listener is also only HTTP. So therefore, we are going to go leave this as it is, and we are going to go to configure routing. So with configure routing, this is where you create your target groups, and we are going to create a new target group. So like I mentioned in the diagram, we are going to have only one target group called as default. I'm going to create the target group called as default. And with this default target group, you can see that the target type that we studied in the PPT is of type instance or IP or Lambda function. We are going to go with instance right now because we have 2 EC2 instances with us. And the protocol and the port is only going to be HTTP and port 80 because even on our EC2 instance, we have HTTP and port 80. And the health check, this is pretty important because the health check protocol is going to be HTTP because the load balancer is going to be hitting both our EC2 instances on port HTTP. The path is going to be slash. To just tell you why it's slash, even at the end of this IP address, if you put slash, it's going to go back to the same IP address only. So that's the reason why we have it as slash, right? And then the advanced health check settings where we have our healthy threshold, unhealthy threshold, timeout and interval. So our healthy threshold is going to be, I'm going to bring it down to 2. The interval, I'm going to bring it down to 10 seconds. We already studied about what these are, but if you want more clarity, always click on the information button and you'll be able to find more answer. Okay. So the maximum that we modified on this is give the target group a name. That's the maximum that we did. And then we directly just modified one of these 2 settings, right? So the rest of the settings can be the same. Always remember, guys, always remember one crucial point over here. Just for your lab to work, you have to remember this. So if your EC2 instances are on port HTTP and port 80, your load balancer should be on listener protocol HTTP and port 80. Your target group should be on HTTP and port 80. Your health check should be on HTTP and port 80. Got the idea? So everything should match, but just for this particular lab. So when it comes to HTTPS, that's a totally different story. But for right now, when you're doing your labs, always remember your instance is on HTTP port 80. Your load balancer is on HTTP port 80. Your target group is on HTTP port 80. Your health check is on HTTP port 80. All of these guys have to be the same for your lab to work. Okay. So next is where we are going to register our targets. So when we are registering our targets, we can choose both of these two EC2 instances. It has found out both these EC2 instances are running. So don't just click these and just go ahead and click on next review. You have to add it to the registered of that particular target group on port 80. Go ahead and click on next review, click on create. So now your load balancer will be created. So once your load balancer is in the creating status, like it's the provisioning status and it has to come to the active status, we will walk through some of the properties of this load balancer in the target group. So you can see over here in the properties of this load balancer, you can see we got a DNS name automatically. So this is the DNS name that we are going to resolve on the browser. And this DNS name has internal IP addresses that are being rotated on a frequent basis by AWS themselves. So they don't expose the IP address. But when you're working with the Google Cloud Platform, for every load balancer that you spawn, they give you a global IP address for that load balancer. But when it comes to AWS, you have only a DNS name. And then you can see all of your metadata over here, like internet facing, the type is IPv4, which IRBD zones you have chosen. And then you can see over here the security group that you have associated with your load balancer, which has port 80 open. And then over here you have something called as access logs. This is something that I would like to mention over here. So this access logs is nothing but you can store whatever logs that are being generated when people request this load balancer, right? When they do a HTTP request on that load balancer, like the IP address of the source and so on. So which port that they access from, or which device they access from, or which protocol they accessed your load balancer from, what was the source IP, what is the destination IP, what is the source port, what is the destination port. Those related details for your end user, for your load balancer, you can monitor all of those details, and it's called as access logs, and you can send it to an S3 bucket, right? So that's also possible. So this is one setting for a load balancer that is possible. The next one that I would like to mention is regarding the listeners. So when it comes to the listeners over here, you can see that we have port 80 as one of the listeners. And if it's port HTTPS, which is port 443, you have to present an SSL certificate, which we'll study at a later lab. And then you can see over here, we have something called as view or edit rules. With this view or edit rules, you can see over here that if any request that comes to your load balancer, it should be automatically forwarded to the target group called as default target group. And we don't have weighted routing policy. We are directly forwarding all of our requests to this target group. But then you can also do something regarding path-based routing. So how do you do that? So you click on the plus button and you insert a new rule, and you say if the path is if the path slash with slash product star, then go ahead and forward it to that respective target group called as a product service target group. Got the idea? So similarly like that, you can do it for different microservices. So you can have one for slash product, one for slash order, one for slash review, and you can have separate target groups where you send all of your respective requests to, right? So that's pretty much possible. I'm going to click on cancel. Just know that we will do that respective microservice lab a little bit later, or probably at the end of our session. And it's very, very important that you remember that going into the exam, that you can also have path-based routing, or you can also have host header routing. So if we cancel this, you can add a new rule, and you can see that we can also have host header based routing. You can have path based routing, query string based routing, source IP based routing, and so on. So all these are possible with the load balancer. But for your exam, just remember that you can go with normal routing as well as path based routing. That's more than enough, right? So this is where you go ahead and modify all of those. So that's regarding listeners and regarding the routing capabilities of a load balancer. When it comes to the monitoring aspects, you can see by default, you get CloudWatch metrics regarding the target response time, the requests, the rule evaluations, how many 400 errors you got, how many 500 errors you got, and ELB 500 errors, ELB 400 errors, how many 502 errors you got, how many 503 errors you got. This service unavailable error. When you get a 503 error, it's a service unavailable error. And similarly like that, you have all the other related metrics that you can get from a load balancer, and this is given to you by CloudWatch. And then when it comes to the integrated services for a load balancer, to prevent yourself from application and network layer attacks, you can go ahead and configure WAF, which is called as a web application firewall, which we studied when we studied about CloudFront, right? Similar to that, WAF can also be configured on your application load balancer and not on your network load balancer. WAF only works with your application load balancer, which we'll see at a later stage. But just know that by integrating WAF with ALB, you get that prevention of network and application layer attacks like cross-site scripting or SQL injection or IP spoofing and whitelist and blacklisting of IP addresses and so on. So those features you get with web application firewall. So you can associate that with an application load balancer. So these are some of the settings of the load balancer. So let's see if the load balancer has come to the active status. It has come to the active status. In the meantime, let's also go ahead and check whether our targets are in the healthy status. So how do you check your targets, whether they are in the healthy status? You go to target groups. So in the target groups, you can see over here that we have a default target group that we created with that particular load balancer called as my web server ALB. And you can see for the target group, the protocol is HTTP, the port is 80. And you can see over here under targets, you can see both of these instances are in the healthy status because our health check has passed. Our health check is proper. If you see that your instances are in the unhealthy status, the first point of troubleshooting is your health check. The second point of troubleshooting is within your EC2 instance. You got to go within your EC2 instance and find out whether your application is running or not. But right now, we know for sure that both of our applications are running, and we are able to see that even in our target group and even in our health check, our health checks have passed. We have done it for port 80 and protocol HTTP. So that's the reason why I mentioned that all of your protocols for your load balancer, for your target group, for the health check, and all of these should match even for your load balancers listener. So if everything is in HTTP and port 80, automatically you should see your application coming to the healthy status, right, on your target. So even for the targets, you can go ahead and edit your health check settings over here. You can go ahead and modify your health check. If suppose you want to modify your health check, you can modify that. It's pretty much possible. And then regarding the monitoring for your targets, it tells you the number of unhealthy hosts, which is 0 right now. And the number of healthy hosts you can see with this blue arrow here, which is 2 healthy hosts that we have. Similarly, over here, you have your requests, you have your HTTP backend errors, and so on. So all of these are there. So now let's go to the load balancer's DNS name, and let's go ahead and copy the DNS name and paste it on the browser. And you'll be able to see the same hello world that is being displayed from this DNS name, which is great. It's amazing. So now this is resolving back and forth between two of our EC2 instances. This is one EC2 instance, this is the other EC2 instance. Resolving between both of our EC2 instances. So you can just keep refreshing this guy. It's going to be very fast. It's going to be really good. So for you to note this configuration, and you can see that this is also not secure because we have our ALB running on HTTP only. Okay. So now one thing that we are going to do over here is, since I told you that load balancers can help you from availability zone failover, let's manually shut down one EC2 instance. Let's terminate it. Let's terminate one EC2 instance. So the US East 1A, I'm going to terminate this guy. The reason I'm terminating this guy is to ensure and show you that load balancers can help us from availability zone level failover. And let's, while this guy is in the terminating status, while it's going to the terminating status, let's look at our targets for our load balancer. So under targets, you can see that we have only one healthy target right now. And when we go ahead and refresh our load balancer's DNS endpoint, we are still able to serve our end user customers from another availability zone. So that means this guy, which is the US East 1A, has gone down, and this guy, which is the US East 1C, is still up, and we are able to serve our end users from the load balancer's DNS endpoint, which is rerouting all of our requests to that one healthy host that is running. So one more thing regarding load balancers is, how do you tighten up your security group? That is also very important, right? How do you tighten up your security group? So right now, you have your EC2 instance that has its security group, and this EC2 instance that has its security group is opening up port 80 to the outside world, which is not a good practice. When you have a load balancer, you don't want anyone directly accessing your EC2 instance over port 80. You want everyone to access your load balancer on port 80. So therefore, what we are going to do over here is, we are going to modify our instances security group, and we are going to say over here. So let's probably look at this. Let's look at our instances security group. So which is our web server security group, right? So my web server SG. So this is our instances security group. And what we are going to do over here is, we are going to modify HTTP over here to include the inbound traffic to come only from the load balancer. So we are going to type SG hyphen over here. So we are going to call this coming from my load balancer security group. So let's just scroll down and see where my load balancer security group is at. It was called as my web server ALG, right? My web server ALBSG. Yeah, cool. So now what happens over here is, rather than specifying HTTP to be open to the outside world, which is bad practice when you have a load balancer, we are tightening up the security group on our EC2 instance to say that only our load balancer can access our EC2 instance on port HTTP. Got the idea? This is where you go for best practice again. You ensure that even in your security group, you have best practice where you have your load balancer can only access your EC2 instance over HTTP. You don't have direct access to HTTP, right? So let's go ahead and click on save rules. So now when you go to this particular endpoint, which is still running, you will not be able to resolve this from the browser, but you will still be able to access this guy from the load balancer. So how many ever times you refresh the load balancers endpoint, you will still be able to access one of those EC2 instances, but not directly access it from the browser. So this is the best practice. So again, I'll repeat it. Go to your security group of your EC2 instance and specify that the incoming traffic on port 80 can come from the load balancer by mentioning the load balancer security group. Got the idea? So these are all of the things that I would like you to remember regarding load balancers. It was pretty fast, but I would like you guys to remember all of these configurations going into the exam. So now how do you tear down your environment? Go ahead and remove that other EC2 instance that you have. So whatever EC2 instance that you still have running, go ahead and terminate this guy. So once you terminate this guy, what happens is your load balancer starts giving 503 errors. So this is just going to keep resolving, and finally it's going to give you 503 service unavailable error. So just wait for that to happen. So you can see under target groups right now, even this target is not registered. So it gave a gateway timeout error. It's great. Yeah, now it's back to 503 service temporary unavailable error. So now what you're going to do is delete the load balancer. Click on actions, delete, click on delete. I'm going to also delete the previous load balancer that I created. Click on delete. So now go back to target groups and delete all of your target groups that you have associated with the load balancer. Okay, got the idea? So this is how you tear down your infrastructure, remove all of the instances, remove the load balancer, and then finally remove your target group. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording. People who want to try it out can try it out in your own AWS account, or even try to use this AWS account right now to go ahead and try this lab. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to open up for questions.